Welcome. To those of you that just joined, welcome to the Community Day in Copenhagen. To those that have joined us in the morning, good to see you again. I'm glad you still have energy, and I hope you can still hold out until we start with lunch. We will be talking today about, okay, this is fun. We'll be talking about Novo Nordisk. No, not yet. We just found this clicker thing on the stage, and we have not practiced this. Let's see how this goes. Our talk is called, I'll read it right here, Empowering Innovation Through Delegation, Novo Nordisk User-Centric AWS Transformation. We'll find out together what that means. And as you see, our logo is conveniently already on this slide, because Novo Nordisk is a sponsor of this event. And we went all in using this slide template and only found out yesterday that would not have been necessary. So I hope that the contrast works in this room. If it doesn't, please mention it and we'll see whether we can dim the lights. So quickly, just to make sure, in case anyone in the room has managed to not figure out who Novo Nordisk is, it's hard to do in Denmark, but maybe not all of you are from Denmark. Novo Nordisk is a pharma company that mostly serves patients with diabetes, and with that we serve roughly 50% of the market in the world with insulin. More recently, we've also started serving patients with obesity, and that's a growing market, maybe the reason you've heard about Novo Nordisk in the news lately. And today, just with obesity and diabetes, we're serving more than 40 million patients. So that gives you a rough idea of why our company is quite big, but also that we're not an IT company. Okay, I'm not going to use this thing, sorry. So, who are we? You may be wondering, there are 3 people up there, just 2 people down here. What is happening? But we'll get to that. So let's quickly introduce ourselves. Rasmus?
Yes, my name is Rasmus. I'm a senior cloud engineer working in the AWS landing zone team in Novo Nordisk. I like playing board games. Besides work, I'm currently studying a master's degree at ITU, so that's taking a lot of my time right now. And this is the first time I'm attending an AWS Community Day, so I'm really excited about that.
This is me. My name is Jasper. I have the title of lead architect, and I would like to consider myself as an architect that also codes, but right now I'm a product owner, so I have other reasons for not coding. I'm the product owner for a team called Analytical Tools. That's not what we're going to talk about today, but we have a few of our team members here today, so if you want to, reach out afterwards. I really love bikes. My colleagues will be able to confirm that. Yes, I see nodding. I do acro yoga, at least that's the hobby that I actually get time to do lately, and I've actually found a fellow acro yogi in the crowd as well. And I'm a dad. I have a 16-month-old son and a fluffy one as well. We live on Amager, not that far away from here. And then the third mysterious person on this slide, he's actually here today. He's not sick anymore, but Sebastian has been sick for a while. He initiated this topic together with us, and he helped a lot with the idea and with the proposal, but then unfortunately was out sick while we were preparing most of the talk, so we decided that he's just a guest today. But if you want to know more about these topics, he really knows his stuff, so thank you, Sebastian. Okay, what are we going to talk about today? We'll start with where we come from as a company and as an organization. How do we get to this place? Why are we at an AWS conference today? And then we'll show you the first things that were happening when Rasmus joined, I think 4 years ago. I joined 2.5 years ago. Roughly at that time, what did we already have? Where were we at that time? And then we'll go to the main part of today, the new foundation that we've built, and then show you a bit of what we are doing with that and what we're planning to do based on that. And now, welcome to those that also arrived now. This is a good chance to make sure that the rest that has been sitting here for a while is still awake. We will do this a few times throughout the talk to make sure that you're still with us and to get to know you a little bit better. So let's try this out. I hope you all know how to raise your hand. No QR codes, just your hands. So Who of you does not write code in their current role? Interesting. We have a lot of pretty pictures for you today. And who does write code? Awesome. We don't have code for you today. OK. I have more questions for you. Sorry. We have to go through these. Who of you has created an AWS account before? OK. That's a good prerequisite for listening to this talk. Who of you has built something that you called a platform before? Interesting. Great. Cool. And who of you knows this self-description? Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. Yeah? OK, so that might help you to understand the story that we're going through in a bit. So, where do we come from? Again, Novo Nordisk is a pharma company. So we work in a highly regulated space. When we talk about patients, when we talk about drug development, when we talk about the production of drugs, we need to be very careful, and we need to prove that we're taking the highest care in what we do to not put patients at risk. It also means we're not an IT company. And I think that mindset may be changing, but as of today, we very definitely say, we are a pharma company, we're not an IT company. And that used to mean that any software that we used was either completely bought or we outsourced the development of the software. And for the IT department, that meant we focused on things such as networking, security, putting up Wi-Fi hotspots, making sure that the printers are connected, these sort of things. But that has changed, as you can imagine. So when we joined, and I think like the more recent history, IT at Novo Nordisk has seen a change to the adoption of cloud technologies, and people were starting to think more about the data that we have as an asset and not just something that happens to be stuck somewhere in a database. And people that understood this started building analytical solutions and even machine learning solutions that really started making a difference in our business. And with that, we started building more software. And building software means you need to actually own the solution. You don't just create a service ticket to someone else. You have to answer. You have to make sure that it runs. And that also means we have completely different roles. I think the titles that we have today probably didn't really exist 10, 15 years ago in this company, or at least they were super rare, and now we see them all over the place. And why cloud? Well, I think everyone understands that science today is going a lot more digital. We have scientists that are sitting in a lab. We have trials on real patients. But we have a lot of things that happen in between that really rely on data and on compute resources. And the scientists working with these things, they want scale. They want lots of compute powers. They want all the GPUs we can throw at them. But we don't buy the GPUs. We let AWS do that for us, right? And then, of course, other parts of the business become more and more data-driven. So when we look at manufacturing, when we look at marketing, or, for example, our very big initiative about reducing the emissions of all our supply chain, we can only do that if we understand the full picture and really get the data together. So we were, at this point, a company that was beginning to be aware of data, quite good at doing cloud things, and that means that I am here. I represent an area called BI, Data Management Analytics, so I'm more from the data side. And then we have Rasmus here.
Yes, I come from global IT operations, and you might think that operations, they are managing servers and stuff like that, but no, our department is managing more like IT platforms. And for example, my team, we are the ones that are managing the AWS landing zone in Novo Nordisk. And so we have already established now that there was a need to use the cloud in Novo Nordisk. And so I would like to just try and explain how that was introduced in Novo Nordisk, because originally there was no initiative on how to get onboarded in cloud. And so what happened was that people around in the company started swiping their credit cards, creating individual AWS accounts all over the place. And this was needed to in order for people to get running, but from my department in global IT operations, we wanted a bit of structure because we had all of these AWS accounts, but there was no overview, there was no reusability, there was no standardization. And so we took all of these AWS accounts and imported them into an AWS organization. If you're not familiar with AWS organizations, you might be, you might not be. It means that we can put all AWS accounts in under one account, meaning one billing plan and one legal contract as well. And this also allows us to group accounts into organizational units or OUs, where we can apply services or policies or stuff like that at the OU level, so that we can manage accounts at scale. This was a really good beginning. This helped the existing projects, but it also allowed us to develop a process for provisioning new account, a standardized way of doing that. So we have that here. And when I say an AWS account, you might think of an empty container where you put your workload into it. But in Novo Nordisk, when you get a Novo Nordisk AWS account, it is more than just that. We put a lot of different layers. I tried to simplify this, all the things that we put into an AWS account. So for example, we have the FinOps. All the costs will automatically be charged to the cost center of the team that you're working in. There's the legal. We have an enterprise agreement and all the benefits that falls under that. And the account is automatically enrolled into that when you get the account. We also set up a security baseline, defining some things that you can do and things you can't do. We enable CloudTrail and config. Things you can't do, for example, is you cannot leave the AWS organization or you cannot use the root user. Then we also set up these 4 default accesses right now that are the same for all AWS accounts. And they are automatically integrated also with our central access management system. So you can go in and request access to your AWS account. And then finally we have some networking, so you can connect your AWS account to our on-premise applications and systems. And this was a really good start. I think this was necessary, but we found out that at some point we saw that people were actually building platforms on top of this platform that we already provided, and that's sort of what we try to accommodate here. So I remember I've been in Novo for around 4 years, and I remember a couple of years ago our organization reached 200 AWS accounts, and I thought, wow, that's incredible. We have 200 accounts with live systems, and that's a lot of systems that we are responsible for. And that was a couple of years ago. Today we have around 1,000 AWS accounts, and we are getting more accounts every week. So it's growing. And that means that we have a lot of different use cases, a lot of different personas using AWS. And so this standardized way that we made an AWS account, that was trying to fit everything into, that was trying to make like a one-size-fit-all AWS account. But we have so many personas and so many use cases. Some people might just want a bucket and an instance, but other people are building these platforms on top of our platforms. And this sort of created some friction, for example, around security concerns, because with this setup we had sort of centralized the management of security around my team together with the security department. And I think if any of you have been managing an AWS landing zone, you might know that if you're trying to roll out new security initiatives, it can be very difficult if people are because people are operating in different ways. If we have someone that are managing all the infrastructure through CI/CD pipelines, and we go in and change those resources, they'll be very unhappy because suddenly their pipeline is breaking. And I think with this platform on top of the platform, there was also a bit of an unclear responsibility model. Lastly, with this setup, it was needed, as I said, but it was also quite slow, so it took weeks sometimes to get started in the cloud. And this was the state of how things were some time ago. But Jesper will tell a bit about what was brewing in his department meanwhile.
Yeah, thank you. So we had some cloud infrastructure, and we were already building things on top of that infrastructure. And I don't actually want to go into all the systems that we have in our department. That might be a bit boring, and we lose a lot of weird terms that make sense to us, but might not make sense to you. So instead, I want to talk about a concept that we really like to think about, and where we want to really create the vision of where we are going with the systems that we built. And this concept is the concept of a data product. That's not the title of the slide. Because a data product is the idea that your data is only really relevant if you treat it as you would a software product. That means you have users or customers, and they have an interest in the quality of your product, the availability of your product, that you keep it updated, that it's well described when they find it. And that is starting to look quite a bit like a marketplace, right? So this is an idea that we often talk about, and where we also borrow from terminology and pictures when we put this on slides that are actually from Amazon, the one without the web services. So when we started talking about this idea, we quickly introduced this. Maybe this looks familiar if you've ever used Amazon for buying books or weird gadgets or what have you. And of course, this is cutting it a bit short. A data product is probably a bit more complicated. Maybe it's a bit hard to boil it down into a star rating. But over time, talking about this concept, we have come to a much better understanding of what the different aspects of it are. We still think there's value in boiling it down to a simple metric, so that when you find a data product and you find data that might be relevant to you, you get a good idea of what others think about it without having to dive very deep. But we also understand that there are different dimensions that we want to talk about. So when we eventually get to where we want to be, we imagine a place where when you find data, when you look for data, you can find something and you quickly can establish the quality, how recent the data is, how big the data is, what kind of license agreements maybe come with it, how sensitive the data is, all those things. They should be presented to you at a glance and should not be something where you have to ask around for help. And ideally, you also immediately get access, because it's a marketplace, right? You find it, you want it, you get it. Okay. So our next, probably even more favorite topic, the data mesh. Maybe quick question, who has heard of the data mesh before? Yes, okay, so I can probably skip this slide. Well, I won't, because we like it so much. So we already talked about data as a product. We have 3 other pillars in the data mesh principle. And by the way, we did not make this up. There's a book about this. There are others out there doing this, but we really like this idea, and we're striving to go into this future of a data mesh. So the next pillar of the data mesh is the distributed domain-driven architecture and ownership. And that means that we create separate nodes where the data is actually owned, so that the people that know their data, that are really experts in the domain, they have full ownership. We don't do the central data lake that can become a data swamp. I mean, don't worry, we also have a central data lake for the use cases that don't require this. But we also don't want a big data swamp to, like, everyone throws it in one place and we have no oversight. So this decentralization or distribution is really important. But the data mesh also thrives on being self-serve. And that means that you don't have to be a full-stack DevOps ninja in order to work with it. You only have to know your data. And if you know data and if you can do something with data, you should be able to use it. We should meet you where you're at with the right abstraction level for you. And that means, because we have federated computational governance built into an ideal data mesh, we can also make sure that it's interoperable and that you can find and interact with the data that others have and the data products they have built. So maybe you've heard about the FAIR principles, and when you go through them, they map really well to this concept. So We are in the business of building data platforms. What does that mean? We have found over time that it's not just the full stack ninjas, it's also people that have a background in a domain that really know their data. Maybe they are really good with molecules, for example, that go into drugs, and those can be represented as data, and they have their tools to work with it. Maybe they're really good with financial data and modeling them, or maybe they're engineers building machine learning models. We don't know, right? We want to serve all of them with our data platforms. And that what we learned with that is that we have to consider user experience for all these personas. Of course, we have to focus, but and cannot serve everyone at the same time, but we have to continuously improve both the UI, the easy-to-use, non-tacky interface, as well as our CLI for the more technical folks that use our platform, because they need a programmatic way to automate their workflows. So this is sort of the business that we're in. And to give you some numbers, I got permission from, actually we have the product owner of this, the solution right here. Thanks for joining, Theo. Data Hub is one of our newer platforms that really supports this data mesh approach. So we have this decentralization built in, and we have the governance for data and the interoperability, and we really try to make this work. We know this will not be the only solution. We also make sure that it's interoperable with others, but if you're in this ecosystem, we make it very easy for you. So in Data Hub, we have 220 AWS accounts, because again, you use your own account, you own your data. And we heard earlier, Rasmus was amazed by 200 accounts in the entire organization not too long ago. Now we have one solution in our department that serves more accounts than that. And we have 43,000 tables. That is, of course, tabular data. We also have a lot of data that is not tabular, and that in total spans across 1,800 data sets. There may also be images in there. Some data sets are very, very big. Others are smaller. I don't have the entire drill down on these numbers, but this is to give you an idea of what kind of user base we are dealing with today. So we like to build data platforms. Rasmus's area likes to provide cloud infrastructure or AWS accounts, and sometimes there was some friction. We wanted to do some things that didn't work yet, and as Rasmus mentioned, it took a while to really get a new account. So what did we do? Well, we agreed to collaborate. Of course, that's what we do. So let's make sure you're still with us. Who of you has a title that contains DevOps? Okay, cool. Who of you is doing DevOps? Okay, I can live with that. Thank you. And who wants to talk about DevOps over coffee or beer later? Come on! Let's see. We'll find out later. But I definitely want to talk more about DevOps. So I think this brings us to the point where we can start talking about what it actually is that we've started building together. So we got together, we looked at, we put the cards on the table, said what worked, what didn't work, where are we, and one of the first things that we could actually do is that the account provisioning, there are several processes around it, but the actual provisioning could be better automated and streamlined so we could get our new accounts much faster. That was cool. So we started off with a win. We also attempted delegating a bit more capabilities, just flick a switch, now you can manage your own OUs in your account. That turned out not to really deliver the results we were hoping for, which is why we had to dig a bit deeper. One thing we agreed on, though, is that we really want to collaborate more. We don't want to have our separate silos of code bases that we cannot access, and we only have to file a ticket if we want a new feature. We want to really collaborate. And we like open source. We're not quite ready to open source everything that we're doing, but we have chosen to adopt what we call inner source model. So everyone in the organization gets full access to the code, is allowed to file issues, is allowed to file pull requests, And yeah, I think that this has really helped this initiative. So that meant we needed a new collaboration model. Suddenly we have people that are from different areas that needed to form a team around this, and I think it's been quite a journey. I was not part of this team, by the way, so ask us afterwards how this went. But I think that this was really a good sign that we started to work together. And well, then we came up with a new product, the AWS Foundation. So, if you've all practiced for your certifications or just curious about AWS in general, you've probably come across this picture before. Who has seen this picture before? Awesome. So this is the shared responsibility model. AWS owns part of the responsibility. You as a user own part of the responsibility. As I mentioned, some of our platform users, they know less. So maybe they don't want all that much responsibility, but they still want to benefit from cloud services, right? So that's where this initiative comes in. We want to cover a lot of this, and we'll get to what we cover in a minute, but basically this is where we come in. We reduce the responsibility for the individual end users by creating some baselines at different layers so that you can start building your individual solutions more quickly and with a bit more safety, especially, I guess, mental safety, that you're not breaking anything.
Yes, and so we realized that, okay, in order to actually support this new shared responsibility, we had to sort of start over. We had to, because the existing way that we did it, we were a bit stuck in some design decisions that were made a long time ago. So we had to rethink what we're doing. And one of the things that we didn't do in the existing organization was using Control Tower. And I included this slide because whenever I talk about landing zones, people always talk about Control Tower. And we tried it out. We created an organization, we installed Control Tower, and we decided it's good, but it's not for us. And I'll just quickly go through why this was not a tool that we wanted to use. One of the things was that we wanted to have a really automated platform. We wanted to automate everything. We didn't want to rely on manual interactions, and there weren't available APIs for all of the things that we wanted to do. So that was already a bit of a showstopper for us. There was also some parallelization limits, so we could only do certain operations in Control Tower at the same time. It took 20 to 30 minutes for Control Tower to provision an account. So that means even if we were able to put all of the stuff into an account that we wanted to in order to create it, then we would still have to wait 20 to 30 minutes for Control Tower to finish it. And I think also Control Tower is a bit of an opinionated tool that is more focused on centralizing a lot of these things, and that's exactly what we wanted to move away from. And then we, from experience managing a landing zone at this size, we see that whenever we create a policy, we always have to have a way of adding exceptions to that, because in the end, we in the landing zone team are not delivering to the value of the business. That's the people that are actually using the accounts and building applications. So sometimes we do need to make an exception for someone to be able to achieve something. And that was not really greatly supported in Control Tower. But again, we put all of this feedback to AWS. We have been working together with AWS when we were building this. And we decided that we want to revisit this decision in the future, because they are updating Control Tower quite a lot all the time. So maybe it will be changed at a later time. It's a great tool, but it was not for us. Yes, so in order to actually delegate all of this responsibility, we came up with this tiered ownership, and this is actually reflected in the OU structure that we had for the organization. So we decided on looking at the AWS account that we had, the one I showed with the big stack of things, and we decided to say, okay, what's the minimal baseline of a Novo Nordisk AWS account? What is the minimal of what everything needs, that needs to be in all AWS accounts? And that's what we manage at the foundation layer. So that's where we have the management account, and we have the top level OUs. But everything underneath that is managed by the platform. So each platform actually will get their own OU structure in our organization, where they can move around, organize accounts however they want. And and this will allow the platform to sort of build the platform for their purpose, because this is not just an OU structure that we are delegating. We're also delegating other services like StackSet, Security Hub. We're also looking into IAM Identity Center so that they can manage the accesses to the accounts. So a lot of these things that we were managing centrally, we are now delegating to teams like Jasper's team, so they can actually manage their platform as a platform. And this will, the idea is that this will allow the platform to build higher abstraction for a broader audience that are their users. I'll just try and show how we are planning to do account management. I say account management, not account vending, because we realize that if we only consider how to create accounts, then what about when we change that process? How do we do that for all the other accounts that we already have? So we have learned from our mistakes and say, okay, we need to have a plan on how we are managing the accounts throughout their life cycle. So both when they are created until they are decommissioned, if they are decommissioned. And we decided to look into the different components that make up an account and say, okay, all of these components needs to be able to handle creation of accounts. They need to be able to verify that it is configured correctly. They need to be able to update it, either if the settings of an account is changed. Let's say they want another region in this account, then we need to update it. When the account is decommissioned as well, we need to be able to handle that. And this is just an example of one thing that we do in an account. It's a very simple example, but it was easy to show in a diagram. So we are enabling config in all AWS accounts, and we are doing that through a StackSet. So that could be one component that we are adding to an account. Then another thing that we sometimes do is that we need to enroll the account to some external vendor. That could be some cost management, some security. And often here we need to deploy an IAM role into the account. We'll often do that through a StackSet as well. And then we'll need to have some kind of Lambda function or whatever to call the API of the vendor saying, okay, we created this account. Now you need to start monitoring that. And then another pattern that we also sometimes have is, for example, we need to add another access into this account. Then we will assign a permission set in IAM Identity Center, and then the IAM Identity Center service will then make sure to deploy that role into the account. And the box that we have at the bottom here, that's the delegated administrator for the IAM Identity Center account. We want to try to not do things directly in the management account, because that's recommended. But with this new setup, so before we already had something like this, where the foundation was managing a lot of stuff centrally, but now we're introducing the platform account, and they are actually able to do whatever they want, because they will have access to deploy things directly into the accounts that live in that platform. So, and we are not, from the foundation point of view, going to enforce how this is done or what they are doing. So this means that maybe they have a step function that deploys an EKS cluster whenever an account is created. I don't know why they specifically want that, but it could be. Or it could be that they want to use StackSets as well, because that will be enabled for the platform to do also. So they could deploy their own config rules, for example. Or even, as I mentioned, we are trying to delegate IAM Identity Center as well. We are still figuring that out a bit, but that means that the platform will actually be able to manage the accesses into this account as well. So that's all great. Now the platform can do all of these things. What does that actually mean? And I think what's really nice is that this will, for example, allow them to create their own custom security controls, meaning that they can, in the platform, they are able to choose what services are available, what regions do we allow, do we do enforcement, how do we do enforcement. This is all decisions made for the platform, because the platform knows the users that they have. They know how to introduce these kind of things. And it also allows the platform to add, on top of the foundation account vending, they can add their own platform-specific account vending. So they can decide what are the default resources that you already get when you get an account from this platform. And they can also choose, do we consider different types of AWS accounts? Maybe there's a data product account, maybe there's another type of account. And also, how do we handle environments in this platform? Do we have one account per environment, so one for dev, one for test, one for validation, or do we do it in a different way? That's all up to the platform to decide. And finally, it also allows the platform to decide on what does the access model look like in this platform. So what user roles do we have? Instead of these 4 default roles that we used to assign to all AWS accounts, now there can be more platform specific roles, more or less roles if they want less access as well. They can decide if they want to pre-configure their account with, for example, pipeline access, so they can start deploying resources. Or maybe they could also delegate access even further, saying that, okay, each account has an account admin, and the account admin is not able to choose what roles they are, but he can maybe choose what permissions that they have in that account that he's administrating. But this is all ways that the platform can customize the experience. And I wanted to try and give an example of how this could look like. So let's say that we wanted to have a developer-oriented platform. Instead of requesting individual AWS accounts like you used to, now instead you request an AWS project. And what this includes is a lot of the stuff that you would otherwise have to request. Like previously you had to request an account for each environment, so one for dev, one for test, one for val, one for production. And then you also had to request a GitHub project or an Azure DevOps project or whatever, wherever you want to store your code. You had to set up the pipeline, you had to do a lot of bootstrapping every time you wanted to start a new project. But with this idea is that you request an AWS project, it's pre-configured with these different environments. It's pre-configured with like you get a repo as well. And the repo is already set up with a pipeline that has access to the different environments in AWS. So you don't need to do that. You can just request this, and as soon as you get it, you can start deploying stuff. And an example could also be that we restricted how the user is able to access these, because that's part of what the platform can do. So it could be that the user can safely log into the developer environment, but he's of course not allowed to log into production, because he should only deploy to production through the pipeline. So that's one side of the spectrum. Then we could have a platform for the sort of opposite side. We call it an advanced ClickOps platform, where people can only really launch products through the AWS Service Catalog. And so in this example, it could be maybe a container cluster with security groups pre-configured and an API gateway, Route 53, and a database behind it. So that's just a product that you log in and click and deploy. And then you can choose what versions and put in your parameters, and then you have it already deployed. You don't need to think about that. And then the platform that is managed, or the team that is managing this platform, are then the ones that are defining what products are available. And it could be made based on pre-existing CDK constructs that we had. So now that I presented this, I'm quite curious. So who likes the developer-oriented platform? Most people. Nice. Does anyone like the ClickOps platform? Yeah, nice, nice. So now that we have this setup, this new and nice setup, this is how it used to be, and this is the benefit that we're getting now. Before, it used to take weeks to get started, but now we can get this customized workspace with developer tools already connected, and we can do that in less than an hour. We used to have this one-size-fit-all accounts. Now we have divided that into foundation, platform, and then whatever the user puts into the account. There was a lack of visibility the way that we were doing it before, but now, for example, we are delegating security leg, so the platform will be able to see all of the security findings and logs for that platform. We're also doing inner sourcing, which means everyone can actually see how the foundation is built. And And finally, instead of having one set of security policies, now we have a baseline policy, we have the platform-specific policies, and beside from that, the platform is also providing this golden path, which can increase security even because the golden path sort of defines how do you operate in this platform.
Yeah, so thank you, Rasmus. I hope you get an idea of what it is that we've built with the AWS Foundation at Novo Nordisk. And where does that put us today? So the timing coincides quite well that this is now a thing. This is not a theory. This is not a PowerPoint deck. We have built this, but we also have to really start using it. We have to prove that it lives up to its promises. So in our area, we're really excited about this. Again, we are already building platforms. We already have a lot of users. And we're really excited to get started and be part of this shared responsibility model and to start provisioning our accounts through our own platform definition, so that, as we saw in the picture just now, that we can actually provision an account on the user's behalf. Because right now, if you look at some of our onboarding guides, the first step in the onboarding guide is go somewhere else and order an account. Of course, that is not the greatest user experience. And in the future, we'll be able to say, click here, we'll provision it for you. And while it provisions, keep reading, right? So we're really excited to start using this. And we also are convinced that along the way, we will find more use cases where we can build, where we can create purpose-built infrastructure for certain recurring use cases that we can then provision on behalf of our users. So we had some examples before, and while we do not want to do ClickOps, we fully understand that not all our users are at the same level of proficiency with infrastructure as code as we are. So these sort of offerings, these different abstraction levels for different personas, this is really what we like to think about, and now we are able to do that. So, a reminder, what we are trying to enable is this vision of the data mesh. And how we do that is that we have a way of working in our area where we combine building out these platform products with a sort of collaboration approach with the business. So we have our teams building out the products, but we also have teams out that kind of help the business adopt our tools, help build some custom solutions, but also feed back the requirements or features that we don't offer yet, things that don't work well, new integrations they need. And with that, we try to stay in a closed loop to continuously improve our products. And we already have a lot of the things that are on this here. So we really like Lego blocks. There's at least one speaker from Lego here, by the way. So I hope you all like Legos. And these Lego blocks should ideally come in one package. So again, we will now have the ability to provision on a user's behalf. We're already doing that in some parts of our platform, but not in all of them yet. So there are pieces that are living at different abstraction layers, where sometimes you can click a button, you get it provisioned. Other times, you have to go and read some documentation and import some library. And we want to offer things at the right abstraction level for you, so that you can put together the aspects that you need for working with data. So, of course, that usually requires some infrastructure when you're building software, that requires the access to data, that requires spinning up the compute that you need, ideally on demand, so that you don't pay for things that you don't use. And one of the things that we've been working with a lot, and that we're excited to really offer out of the box in this platform as well, is to support MLOps, meaning bringing machine learning from idea into production. And again, we are in an audited space, so we have put a lot of thought into how we do this, and we can help you already, but automating how we help will vastly scale how many of our colleagues we can reach with this, instead of going out and helping them individually. Okay, we're almost done. Are you still with us? Who here thinks that you could benefit from something like the foundation that we've built here? Okay. Nice. Okay, we've done something right. That's good to know. Is there anyone here that is currently building something similar, or maybe wants to build something similar? Yeah? A few platform engineering people? Nice. And who has learned something? Anything? Are you still with us? Any
Nice.
hands not going up mean we did something wrong or they fell asleep? Okay, but there were a lot of hands up. Thank you. Thank you. So, we want to say goodbye with a few learnings that we can share, that we take away, and that maybe also help you. We compiled this word cloud here of things that we considered were important. We couldn't really come up with a way to boil this down, but we hope that this helps. And otherwise, just take the words up there. We like collaboration and DevOps. So, we're not an IT company, and yet we have to adopt principles that modern IT companies adopt in terms of collaboration, in terms of technology that they use if we want to succeed. That's really something that I think is sort of obvious, but now we can also tell that it's true. We learn from people that are great in IT. We don't necessarily learn from people that are great in pharma. Of course, that's also where we look if we can learn what they do in IT, but this is mostly an IT challenge. Another thing, also obvious to anyone that has ever thought about their users and thought about the software products they're building, you need to identify the personas you're working with. Not everyone is like us. We're building a self-service platform for engineers, for other engineers, for data scientists, for business analysts. We are reaching a lot of users out there, and we need to always keep in mind who they are and how they like to work and how we can explain what we're offering to them. Scalability and speed matter, and we honestly think this is probably true for everyone in this room. I mean, molecules are a bit hard to model, but I guess you will find a use case. If you have data and if you have infrastructure, you will probably like that the things you build are scalable and are not hitting a ceiling. And then lastly, of course, we have iterated. That's why we included sort of our beginnings. We wanted to show you that there's a long way between you swipe your own credit card for your account, we have a certain standardization and rigor, to where we are today. We had to learn, we had to iterate, and we'll probably keep iterating, and then, I don't know, maybe we'll come back for another talk with the next iteration. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, for listening in. If you get the slides later, there are links so you can find us, but there are also the pictures to remind you and our names to remind you. So grab us, talk to us. We also have a few colleagues. We have a few colleagues from HR, from other parts, from different parts of our areas in IT, there and there. So yeah, come grab us, talk to us about what we're doing at Novo Nordisk, and have fun with the rest of the day.